right, everybody. Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of Lambdas Who Roll Live. I'm here with my co-hosts Diego and Fernando. What's going on, guys?
What's going on, guys?
What's
All right.
going on? Happy birthday, Diego.
Oh, already.
Birthday.
Thank you, man.
It's the Masters.
Thank you, guys.
Another year in the Masters division.
Oh, man. I was trying to hide the age, but
We're getting closer to Masters 3 now.
oh, man.
Yeah,
Getting old, bro.
Yeah, man. Yeah, happy birthday, and that's exciting.
Thank
And,
you, brother.
today, happy Father's Day to everybody, right? Happy Father's Day, Diego and Fernando, man. Hope you guys
Happy
Thank you,
Father's
guys.
having a good day.
Happy Father's Day to you as well.
Absolutely, and we have a message from one of the
Enzo.
legends, Enzo. Let's see what he got to say.
To all the fathers out there, especially the ones who train jiu-jitsu, happy Father's Day. And for those fathers who don't train jiu-jitsu, happy Father's Day! Happy Father's Day. To all the fathers out there,
Yeah, this is epic,
especially the
man.
ones who train
I love this
jiu-jitsu,
theme.
happy Father's Day. And for those fathers who don't train jiu-jitsu, happy Father's Day! Happy Mother's Day!
Man, that's hilarious, man.
That'll always be funny,
happy
man.
Mother's Day to all those who don't. We hope that you
Okay.
join jiu-jitsu. You join the jiu-jitsu community, and celebrate with us.
Hopefully that'll change after this episode.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I remember the first time I saw that, man. That was hilarious, man. When he said that, and that meme comes out every single year. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't get tiring, man. That's so good.
Yeah,
But
it is
speaking
funny.
of Gracie's, today we decided we wanted to do something pretty fun, something unusual. Before we've been talking about the benefits of jiu-jitsu. We had some guests talking about how they started jiu-jitsu and how they benefited from it, and it's been really, really great. We're on episode 10. We're in the double digits now, which is awesome for us, man. And it's been a wild 10 weeks, right? 10 weeks we've been doing this. It's the 10th week. Man. It's crazy. But today, in honor of Father's Day, we wanted to go and talk about UFC #1 and what we learned from it, right? So we were tasked to watch UFC 1. I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to actually watch the whole thing. I sort of kind of watched the grappling matches, right? There was a lot of finishes. Pretty much every fight was a finish, but either a TKO or anything. But I think only Hoist and probably Ken Shamrock had a submission or submission. So let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Kicking off.
Honestly, man, I'm excited about this one because once we got the ESPN channel for the current UFCs, and I saw that UFC 1 and 2 and 3 were on there, man, honestly, I jumped onto those because it made sense to watch, that from the beginning, kind of refresh. And it was very interesting how the program was set up from the beginning, complete change. If you were to just been the opening scenes, man, you would definitely see a complete 180, a complete change. So just by the look of it, it just made you appreciate that development, right? Again, just from an entertainment point of view. If you listen to the commentary, how they were, man, it was completely off, right? You will not be entertained if you didn't appreciate or understand, because it was all about jiu-jitsu, right? Because the main thing was Gracie jiu-jitsu, right? That was the whole idea behind it. And if you listen to some of the commentary, as they're going, even them, they weren't experts, right? They didn't know too much about what was going on.
Right.
And you can tell, in their talking, you can tell, man, they weren't really versed in, some of the things that were happening, man. Now, obviously, you have Joe Rogan, you have other experts that, are very in tuned with just mixed martial arts in general. But yeah, man, just I guess, we can go start off with that. Yeah, man, the commentary was pretty strange, man. Yeah, very, man. It was off. Some of the things you could even tell they were hesitating or saying arm bars when it was triangles and friggin' I don't know what they were talking about.
Yeah, and that is hilarious when you listen to it, watch it now. You can see definitely the evolution of the knowledge of even of the commentators, right? And I mean, right now in the UFC, who are the most popular commentators right now? You got Joe Rogan is one.
Joe Rogan. I like Daniel
Well,
Cormier. You know, the fact that
Cormier.
he's been in the cage. You know, like a heavyweight legend.
who's the
I
other
think.
guy?
Oh,
The
go
one
ahead.
next to him?
John Anik.
John,
Yeah.
John
Yeah, he's pretty
Anik.
good. He's pretty
Yeah,
good.
Hmm.
but you notice Joe Rogan's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
That
right
planet.
under
Yep.
Eddie
Hmm.
Bravo.
Yep.
You have Daniel Cormier, who's a black belt, I think, under Leo Vieira, who from Checkmate.
Hmm.
John Anik, I don't think he trains. I
I
don't
don't
think
think
he
so.
does, but
Yeah.
obviously he's an analyst. So, and now he's in the, later stages, the older stages of the UFC. So obviously he has studied, and he's been studying for quite a while. And even it's funny. I don't know if you watched the UFC last night. Dominic Cruz was commentating, and Dominic Cruz was. I think this was the last fight with Korean Zombie and then
Then Inge.
yeah, Inge, and he was trapped in the body lock, right, in the body triangle on his back, and then Dominic Cruz was providing the commentary on how to escape, right, and Anik was like, if it wasn't, if you weren't here, basically wouldn't be able to get this level of detail. So you have these commentators that are obviously understand they're masters of the game now, which definitely brings a new element to watching UFC, right? And even us right now, we've been training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and we're familiar with the MMA world from watching it, and even maybe our training partners are semi-pro or pro fighters and stuff. So yeah, when you watch it, you have a different view on it, right? But absolutely, man, the commentary was horrible. But that's what it was, right? It was the infancy stages of UFC, right?
And if you look at that right now, we're like, oh man, these commentators, they were crap and this and that. But like when we were watching it, we were also like, let's go back to kung fu, let's go back to karate, let's go back to
Yeah,
taekwondo, right? Because we didn't also understand, and that was another thing, like the whole how it was before in terms of when you looked at it, you really didn't understand jujitsu, right? Because you didn't know what it was. We all got the hype of going back to whatever martial art that was local to us and whatever martial art we were into. So it wasn't like, oh man, jujitsu, and they're talking about arm bars and mounts and all this. Let's go into jujitsu. One, I think there weren't any, so it wasn't.
Yeah.
Man, there was no signs whatsoever of jiu-jitsu being around in the local area whatsoever. So I guess it's understood, right? We were kind of in the same boat.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
my family, they thought that the UFC, like back in the day, like because we like when my dad was a huge boxing fan, Mike Tyson, all those back in the day, and he thought it was barbaric. Like the UFC is like, what kind of, like, this is not fighting. I don't know what this is. This is like ridiculous, and didn't want us to watch it at all.
yeah,
Me and my brother sometimes would like try to like stay up late night to like watch it, especially like the Kimbo Slice days, like the infancy stages of YouTube, like or watching that stuff, and even then was like kind of like taboo. It was like it looked like a organized crime basically.
yeah,
It was just
Yeah, man. If you, I watched it. This is like my third or fourth time watching it. Yesterday I watched it out of like because of the homework,
hmm
But I've watched it before just on my own, and like again, it's very interesting how what they were put up to do, right? Like I give them all props. Like I give them all like if you were to put people or fighters now in those rules, guarantee they wouldn't last. They wouldn't last in the same way, right? They were going in with less knowledge. They were going in with more like, all right, I know how to box, I know how to fight. Let me go in there and just prove that I'm a better fighter.
hmm
But they weren't expecting like 80% of what was going on. Like what they were gonna face when somebody's punching you without any gloves, any protection whatsoever. When someone is pulling your hair and like the only rules I think there was like you can't bite
No, eye
or,
gouging.
or, or
Oh,
eye
was
gouging.
it eye gouging or?
Yeah, I think it's like yeah you can't eye gouge and you can't bite,
right,
Yeah.
right? But that's it. It's like, yo, everything else you could do, man. You can, yo, pull hair, and if you watch the other ones, you can hit in the groin. And yo, there was this, I think it was number 2 or 3, when the guy was getting pounded, man, and he was just taking it like a champ.
Thinking like
Happy Happy Father's Day for him. But like, you know what I'm saying, like, man, like it was bad, man. Like when this guy was getting stomped. He was so the first fight. I mean, I watched it all, and I wanted to talk about, like, all of it from the beginning, because that first fight, I don't know what's his name, but he landed on the cage, and the guy, he kicked him when he was on the floor, and he lost his tooth.
Yeah. The sumo
Remember that?
So was this Gerard Gordeau versus Taylor Wiley? Oh,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure of the names.
mhm.
But yo,
See, I have the fight card
ima-
up here actually.
okay, yeah, yo, imagine getting right now. Imagine in the UFC rules, you're on the floor and getting like
Stomped out,
swung, kicked on in the face. Like I think it's
yeah.
you wouldn't be able to they wouldn't be able
Look
to
at
handle that, right?
look
It
at the
wouldn't be able to see.
controversy that happened with when Peter Young with the knee to Aljamain Sterling. I think he was, I
ground,
guess,
yeah.
a grounded fighter. Can you imagine getting stomped out? Like, well, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing, right? I mean, it's not just the commentary that has evolved; it's the rules that evolved for the protection of the fighters, right? And now the evolution of that setting, the rule setting, has brought it into a stage where it's more organized, it's more controlled, kind of like boxing, right? And now it has its, and at the same time, it's not just the rules that evolve. I mean, obviously, the fighters have
The
too, right?
first, yeah.
Every
Absolutely.
fighter now is not a specialist in just one art, right? They're specialists in various arts. Now, maybe they have strengths and weaknesses in one, but they all study the same thing. Either you're doing a striking, you're grappling, you're wrestling, you're doing
Muay
something
Thai,
else.
yeah.
Now, right? Exactly, right? You're no longer a Jeet Kune Do fighter against a Gracie Jiu Jitsu fighter, or just a sambo artist versus like a karate dude. Right now, everybody's a mixed martial artist now,
Yeah,
right?
mixed martial artist. Yep.
Right. But yeah, I agree. I remember the first time I watched the UFC, and me and Diego used to do kung fu back in the day, and I remember watching the UFC. My friend Baldwin, he had a tape. He had the VHS tapes, and they were like these underground bootleg. You can't have them. They were like on the black market because nobody could see this. Right? It was brutal. And we went to his house and he put it on, and I think I was probably like maybe 15, 16 years old. So this was back in what, 95, 96 roughly. So the UFC I think came out with 92, 93? 93.
93. Yep.
Right, 93. So this was 2 years later. And we watched it, and I was like, man, that's crazy that, the dude in the gi I didn't even know he was doing jiu-jitsu, right? I had no idea. But he ended up winning, submissions. And like Diego said, I never even thought like, I need to go train this. I was like, nah, I know kung fu, and if it was a kung fu guy there, he would have won, right? And it was, and a big part of it was there was that lack of promotion in the area. I mean, I think most of the popularity of jiu-jitsu really kicked off on the West Coast in California, because that's obviously where these guys were from, or they landed after coming from Brazil. In the East Coast, we really didn't have a big push until really Renzo Gracie started kind of like, doing his thing. And but you didn't know about it. I mean, you bought Black Belt magazine on a monthly basis or whatever, but you never really saw Gracie Jiu-Jitsu come and learn Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. At least, and what's one thing I wish that we would have known, right? I think that's something that everybody who does jiu-jitsu in the later years would say is like, I wish I started earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wish we would have known what jiu-jitsu was at the time and been exposed to it somehow. I would have told my mom and dad, bring me to New York, bring me to New York and go learn that. But it is what it is. But yeah, man, it was a crazy event to watch.
If you look at the fights, and if you focus on Royce Gracie's fights, and you compare the fighters, who his opponents now, you look at them and you're like, man, we could have all easily done the same, right? Not fighting whatsoever, like in our stage right now, going in, gassing out, doing all of that, like, and it was amazing to see how like these guys are, representing their art, right, in that moment, right? And I think there was one fight that the guy with the he came in with one boxing
One
glove,
glove. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what he was thinking. I mean, I think in his comment, I think at the end he was like, "Yo, I regret it. Like I shouldn't have put this on, because he couldn't grab and all that, right?"
Yep.
But he lost just by pressure.
Yeah.
Like Hoist Gracie was mounted, and like and I'm sure we'll get to that, but like it's just to see the beauty of, honestly, like if guys are watching this or people are watching this, and it's not to shout out and to be like, oh, jujitsu, and we appreciate jujitsu, we're biased on jujitsu, obviously, but that's what it was, right? That's what it was about, right? It was about self-defense, it was about control, it was about the art, it was really about how efficient jujitsu was, because obviously, like if Hoist Gracie would have taken hits to the face, right, I'm sure he would have been in a more difficult situation, in a more difficult position to defend, right? Because it's not easy to get punched in the face bare knuckles, right? So at the end of the day, like but the efficiency of jiu-jitsu, the control, the distance management, and all that, like really became like obviously came out on top.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
let's
also too, like oh my bad, I'm sorry, Hernán.
go ahead.
But like just to say, like with that guy, he tapped to pressure. Just think of us like, well, I guess I can speak for myself because I'm not too far removed from being a white belt. So I remember like somebody getting top pressure on me and sinking their like hips into my sternum, and just like all the wind like coming. I think my soul came out too, actually, if I'm not mistaken. And I just tapped, but that's because like I you start to panic because you don't know what's going on, like why do you feel this way, and so I empathize with that.
It is tough, man. That pressure is no joke, especially when you don't know what to do. Like you start, because you start panicking, right? You
Yeah,
start getting into a
Yeah.
position where it's like, man, like if I can't get him off, and that means like you're still basically suffocating, right? You're trying your best, you're moving, but not getting anywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
that in itself, like like mentally, like it just kills you.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's break it down a little bit. So that fight with Hoist Gracie versus Art Jimmerman, right? The boxer with the one glove, and he came in, and I was watching it through the documentary, the DVD that we had bought a long time ago, and so it was giving you a background of the fights leading up to it. And yeah, I do remember him saying that. I wish I never wore the stupid glove because I couldn't grab or anything like that, because he put it on so that he wouldn't break his hand. He thought that he was going to be punching so much that he didn't want to break his hand. I think especially because he was a pro fighter, he was like scheduled to be fighting later on. He didn't want to like damage himself, right? But yeah, so Hoist Gracie, he was measuring the distance, right, with his front kicks that traditional Gracie, that peace out, right, that front stomp, right, that he's doing to measure the distance. And as soon as he felt like he was within range, boom, he shot in, double leg, took him down right into the mount position, and it was
He went to side. He went to side control, and then to
control,
mount. Yeah.
And then okay.
And then from there, it was over, right? The guy had no idea how to get out, and he basically panicked, right? He had an anxiety attack, basically panicked, and he ended up just tapping from that. And that I remember, like even watching it later on. I mean, I don't think I appreciated it as much when I watched it when I was a kid, but I appreciated it later on when I resaw them as as an adult already training jujitsu. And this was like early, a while back, not recently, but I was like, wow, that is crazy how someone who could tap to fear of unknown, right? Yeah, maybe Hoist was really heavy and he was putting pressure on his abdomen and he really couldn't breathe. But I think it was more like fear of the unknown, right? I was like, what am I going to do from this point on? I've never been in this position. This sucks. So let me just get out of it and quit. And that can happen today, right? It might not happen in the gym when you're rolling with somebody who already knows technique and knows jujitsu and stuff like that. Or it might, but it definitely would happen in the street if you are fighting someone who doesn't know jujitsu. Just knowing that bit of control could save your life, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, like if you look at these fights, like they were brawls. They were basically street fights, like in a cage, and again with two rules, right? And honestly, the rules, like how can you get close enough to bite? So that wasn't even a rule. I mean, if you can do everything else, right? But like you're right, you're fearing, you don't know what's going on, you're mounted, but in the whole training, and because obviously we promote jujitsu, we appreciate jujitsu because we're doing it so often, right? Like we said, right? it can still happen now, right? There's times in where the pressure is on top of you now, from white to black, right? The pressure is on top, very heavy. You don't understand someone else's pressure. It gets you get claustrophobic, right? You get like anxiety, you get nervous, But because we're practicing and because we're in the situation often, right? Maybe not that one, maybe different ones, but we're able to kind of like dissect the problem a little bit more, right? And be a little bit more patient. This is why they say, like, obviously the smaller person can defeat the bigger person, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, just the beauty of the art itself. If he would have understood that there is a way out. Like, we tell this to the kids all the time, right? Like, there's like jujitsu works, right? All you got to do, honestly, is kind of be patient and figure out a solution that works best for you. But the pieces are there, right? So imagine if these guys understood a little bit of jujitsu. Even this one guy who fought Shamrock, he got into the close guard. But when he got into the close guard, he held his head and he brought him down to his chest and he was hugging him. So he was in a good close guard, but he was now, like, restricting himself from advancing, right? Because he's holding Shamrock close to him. He's using so much energy, right? He's trying to move. He's trying to get out. He's not being effective. Now, again, that mental process is not, is being shot.
Yeah, and for those who do not train, yeah, I mean that's like your first instinct, right? If you get them, you want to like hold them close so that like they're not going to start punching you and things like that. But then in jujitsu where there's not strikes except for like combat jujitsu, you know that if you do that, then like Diego said, you obviously you're not able to advance, because you're basically adding their weight on top of you. So it's just a lot of things that could go wrong, and that's like one thing that we're taught not to do that.
I felt bad for that. I felt bad for that guy, man. When he got mounted, when he tapped from pressure, I was like, man, it sucks to be that guy because, like, it's so easy. Like, now that we understand it, it's so easy to not necessarily get someone off, right? Because that is a challenging, like, no matter what. But it's like you're comfortable. There's a way to feel comfortable in that, like we say, right? Be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. Like, literally, there is a way to do that, right? If he was just patient, just a little bit more, maybe found a way, like, he didn't punch his ribs whatsoever. Like, the guy in the bottom didn't swing at his rib. Now, if you see UFC, right, they're going for the ribs, right? They're going for, like, the elbows, whatever the case may be, right? Like, they're trying something, But he didn't throw any punch whatsoever. Like, I think once he was on the bottom, he was just like, yo, like, what do I do?
And speaking to that effect, Hoist didn't punch either, right?
Yeah.
Hoist,
I think he was mushing him a little bit.
Yeah, he was mushing him, right? But he never like really struck like ground and pound type of thing like you see nowadays. And I think that speaks volumes for what jiu-jitsu really is, right? The gentle art, right? I mean, we know it's not really that gentle because there is some aggression in it, right? But the whole purpose of it is to be able to put down your opponent in a way that is that protects both the opponent and the one who's applying jiu-jitsu, right? It's supposed to protect both of those people, right? When you have somebody, let's say, in a mount and the guy rolls over and you're just controlling his back, it's a burglar or whatever. Like that guy's not going to go anywhere. You could slip in a rear naked choke if you have to, or you could put him all the way to his stomach and kind of just keep that weight down and have somebody call the cops. Nobody gets hurt, right? And we've seen successful videos like on YouTube. You've seen successful videos where police officers who know jiu-jitsu, who trained something in jiu-jitsu, apply the same techniques. You see the outcome, right? Everybody comes out of there, as safe as possible, right? So that goes to show you how effective jiu-jitsu is, right? And I mean, I'm not going to even say it is when applied and going with someone that may not know. You don't even need to strike to create a reaction. It's just a matter of just control. And I thought that was also, amazing, right?
And I thought maybe, because a lot of people do ask, like, oh, he's in the gi and all that, he has advantage. And yes, obviously the gi does give you an advantage, and because of the, you can submit with it, whatnot. But at the same time, man, like, it is like they can also use it, but at the same time, like, it's not easy to fight in the gi when you would probably be better off, like, or like cooler and like, more comfortable without it. Like, I'm sure that if you were to ask UFC fighters now, be like, hey, would you like to fight in the gi? They'd probably be like, no, man, it's too hot. Like, I'm going to die. It's like, it's a very heavy gi, right? So, like, that in itself was a challenge. So it could have been used against him also, right? So it's just a matter of, and the only reason why I mention is because I mean it's there's a balance, right? He also had some things that were against him, if
Hmm.
people knew how to use it, right? People could have easily like opened it up and like kind of use it to strangle him as well, right? So there's many different options. And obviously street fights, now people are like, oh, jiu-jitsu, the gi is doesn't, whatever. But I can use the collar to, and maybe not even to choke like a gi, but I can still control, right? If I get a good grip
Hmm.
on the collar, I'm gonna get a nice bite, right? And I'm gonna control a little bit. So again, all of that is it was really nice to see, again, like the development and the jujitsu being displayed, in that way.
Yeah, yeah. If you think about it, right? If the guys were smart enough, they could have used the gi against Hoist, right? They could have grabbed it and started swinging him
Yeah.
around. Could have done the old hockey trick and brought it over his
Hmm.
head. Couldn't have
Yeah.
seen him and just started uppercutting him like just straight up hockey. But nobody knew that, right? Nobody knew to use that. And that gi looks heavy, man.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not like the gis that we use nowadays where like they're short fit, tailor
Like
fitted, and
competition gi.
lightweight competition gi. Yeah, right. That gi looked like a judo heavy gi, and but nobody knew how to do anything.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was, yeah. I mean, it was overall, man. It was very entertaining to watch. I mean, just again, what surprised me was, when these guys went in. Again, I don't know the names of these guys, but like, they came in and, you know, one guy fell on the floor and he was getting stomped, like literally, man. And the ref was like, just there, he had to watch. Like even the refs were like,
Yeah.
they probably were in shock too. Like, yo, what the hell is this, man? This guy's getting literally he stomped on the floor. You know what I mean? Like, it was, it was fun to watch, but also like brutal to watch.
Yeah.
I think wasn't one of the refs Big John McCarthy?
Yeah, yeah.
I
It
think
was
later.
Yeah.
I don't think in the first one.
he
I
was
Okay,
think
older than
okay.
him.
no. I think in I think in the second one and onward, then he started like, or maybe but the first one I don't think so. The first guy was he was when Ken Shamrock fought Hoist and Ken Shamrock he tapped,
Oh,
but
57 seconds.
yeah, but he didn't stop though. Like Hoist was still holding him because did you see that? Like, the
Hmm.
guy, so Ken, he tapped a few times. Hoist, he stopped, but he was still holding onto the backpack. Like, yo, like he was. I'm sure they were talking about like, yo, you tapped, so like, but he didn't want to let go because the ref didn't see it, and I think the ref was trying to confirm with Ken Shamrock, like, yo, you tapped. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, this is over. You can't keep.
Yeah.
It's just funny how again, man, the whole program, from fighters to event, to referees, how it all changed. You can really appreciate the difference, man. Like if someone, whoever's watching this or whoever's interested in watching UFC one, you can definitely appreciate, the difference.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right. And when that happened with Shamrock, Shamrock, I think actually once he tapped, I mean, it was hard to watch. I think the angle was really weird too on the camera. But obviously Hoist knew, and Shamrock knew too, right? But Shamrock pulled the leg back in. And when I was watching the documentary, like Hoist was saying, he pulled my leg back in, and I was like telling the ref, yo, he tapped. And then when he got up, Hoist was like kind of
When
complaining, like he said, yo, you tapped, man, and you tapped. And then Shamrock was like, yeah,
Yeah,
you got
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's hard. I mean, think about it. Ken Shamrock he's also like a wrestler, right? He's a shoot wrestler,
Yeah,
right? And he also has submissions, and he submitted one of the guys with a heel hook. The first fight, he submitted with a heel hook. So I mean, think about it, right? You're going in there, you're like, man, I know how to grapple, I know how to wrestle, right? I know how to submit, and you're getting beat. You're on the top of the food chain the same way, right? Like technically as Hoist, right? In your
and
mind, and you got to take that
and I
out.
and I think at the time wasn't Ken Shamrock known as the world's most dangerous man? Like they did like a documentary on him on like ABC or something like that regarding like the stuff that he did and his background and stuff.
I don't know, but
yeah.
that Joker looked strong as hell.
I think
Yeah.
out of everybody on that card, he was probably the most experienced when it came to these type of fights, right? And I think
Hmm.
everybody
He was.
expected him to win, right? Because he was jacked
Yeah.
with freaking rigged,
For real.
and he knew, and he he was doing a pancrase or something like that back in the day. But and he had he knew submission. And I think when he went against his first fight, what's the guy's name? Patrick something.
Patrick Smith.
Patrick Smith, right? I think he got him in a submission, right? I think,
The heel hook.
He heel hook, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, heel hook.
Is this the first one? The one he fought?
The
Yeah,
first one, the first one.
He got him at the end. He got him in the heel hook.
Right. So he got him in heel. I mean, who the hell knows what a heel hook is back then, right? Even now, it's still like a mystery. Even for me, like I'm like trying to figure out how to do this, right? So he knew he had some submission knowledge with him, right? He had something that he knew, and so everybody kind of expected him to be the favorite. And I think it's funny because when I play this in my head, how everything actually happened, you can kind of hear the Gracies in the background saying like, you don't know what to face, what you're facing right now. You don't know what to expect, right?
So if you on that, if you look at his heel hook, if you look at the heel hooks now, they're very graceful, right? Like they go in, it's like smooth, and you go berimbolo, and you go all these things, and all of a sudden, boom, heel hook, right? But you can see that if you see it now, he was fishing for it, and he didn't know how to place his leg in order for him to get it, because he had an opportunity to get it. Like if he would have pinned it, the toes into the armpit, and he would have got it right. He would have been able to transition into it. But you can tell he was also fishing for it and trying to get the heel. But it goes to show you that even with a little bit of information, of knowledge, of of a submission, he was able to get that win. The guy got up afterwards and he was like, yo, like what, like how these street fights now, when they go down to the ground and the people are trying to arm it, they're like, no, stop fighting, what are you doing, you're cheating, arm bars are cheating and chokes are cheating and mounts are cheating and jiu-jitsu is cheating now, you're not fighting fair. And it's like, yo man, like you have to defend yourself, you have to do what you need to do. I'm
watching it right now real quick, just kind of like highlighting it. But it's interesting. Patrick Smith, he was in the bottom and he had him in the guard. I wonder if that was just out of just instincts, or he had some type of knowledge of jiu-jitsu. I want to say
of the guard.
Yeah, the guard. I think he kind of like knew a little bit about it too, but
he kept a good guard. He had a good. I mean, for what it's worth, he put him into the guard. He was using his guard like Hoist was using. I think he was kicking a little bit also with his heels. But the problem was that he held his head and he was holding on. I mean, think about it. You're holding down over 200 pounds of muscle and trying to pick you up and without doing anything else, and that's another thing too, man. Hoist was like 170.
Yeah.
And over there, during that time there was no weight class, right? There was no divisions. It wasn't that you're fighting the same weight. You're fighting someone who's smaller, bigger. You're fighting 3 times in the night, right? You have to defend yourself 3 times in one night, man.
Yeah.
And if you look at these post interviews, again, man, respect to all these guys. Like even afterwards, they were like, "Yo, this was crazy. I love the experience. I want to do it again." Right, props to everyone else who got the win, But it was definitely a cool watch.
And then and watching that, had Patrick Smith known a little bit more of the ground game, he could have probably rolled out of that. Because I'm looking at it right now, I freeze at a still. Ken doesn't even have his legs pinned. He is blocking that one far hit, but he's not blocking the obvious escape route, right? But he's just muscling it, and obviously he doesn't know what's going on, and it is what it is. It's a done story.
Yeah, man. I mean, again, man, with a little. So this goes to show you that again, smaller, with a little bit of information of jiu-jitsu, like we say it, right? You come in, and I tell people all the time, give us a chance, right? Give us maybe a few months, just so you can learn a little bit of the basics. Because if you're walking out of here, someone comes in here and tries to learn jiu-jitsu, their first class, I want you to leave with something that you can actually use, even if you don't come to jiu-jitsu anymore, right? This is your first class, your trial class, the 1 hour, 2 hours, 1 hour that you wanna be here just for the trial. You want to leave with something beneficial, and I think jiu-jitsu is a lot. You can do that, right? Imagine coming in for a first class, knowing how to get out of the mount, or understanding what that mount means. It's huge. Right, somebody on the street now mounts you. You're like, oh wait, I've been here before. I know what to do. Right, that reaction will come out. So imagine if they knew a little bit, to defend themselves or to just advance. to a better position.
So let's take a
But
quick break. We'll come back and we'll finish it
let's
up,
do
and
it.
we'll talk about the
Yes.
final match. All right, we're back. We're talking about UFC #1 and what we learned from that. What I learned is that you need to train jiu-jitsu. If you want to learn to defend yourself effectively in the street, you need to learn jiu-jitsu. That's basically the bottom line what we learned from UFC #1, right? But it's crazy. So.
Yeah, man. I mean, if you break down everything, and obviously right now we're just kind of like throwing, comments out there, whatnot. But if now they do a better job, right? Because like we said earlier, they understand the I think now they need to know a little bit of stand up, they need to know grappling, and they need to know what is it, ground. I think it's like 3 different categories that you need to at least understand within jiu-jitsu now. But imagine again, like if they understood, maybe the boxer understands distance management, but he doesn't understand when he gets taken down. Maybe somebody knows the ground but doesn't know the stand-up, and you can see the difference, right? When you can see these fighters not knowing, or only feeling comfortable with what they knew, right? The boxer wanted to box. The sumo wrestler just he was trying to like grab, and then when he fell to the floor, it was over, like completely done, right? So you can see how just like one way, one track, But Hoist had his jiu-jitsu, but he knew that it was distance management. He closed the distance. He got the takedown. He had the full control on the ground, right? And he was very comfortable and patient in his transitions. And he still had striking because he was able to kind of like still mush the face, push the face away, strike the face a little bit with the palms, right? Because he never closed his fist, right? So, you have that on the with jiu-jitsu, you have that all around kind of understanding of self-defense, of understanding how to manage a fight, right? Because again, like if Hoist Gracie, like if you see the later fights now, like as they develop, like Hoist Gracie, Henzo Gracie, when they were fight guys who were more developed on the hands and the feet and the stand up, they get hit. And now jiu-jitsu becomes what they say, like, oh, if you get punched in the face, a black belt becomes a brown belt, and you get punched again, you become a purple belt, right? And it's true, right? Because it's completely different, right? So imagine if like those strikes would have been coming to Hoist like nonstop, right? It would have been probably a different game,
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely agree. And it is interesting. It's interesting to see Hoist's game that particular event, right? You talked about the distance management, him using that front leg, that front kick, the pisao to kind of gauge the distance, and then at the right time, shooting in, closing the distance, clinching, taking him down, that control on top, and obviously he finished every single one with a submission. Let's talk a little bit about the last one. He did the same thing. That formula worked, right? He did the same thing. He distance management. He kicked. He went for the double. I don't think he succeeded on that double, but he got up. He went for that outside trip, and the guy, he had pretty good balance, right? He was a taller opponent too. Got him to the cage, but Hoist kept on being sticky, and then finally tripped him with the spinning him around, landed right in I believe like in the mount position. And then the guy had him with the headlock position from on his back, and obviously eventually Hoist got him to turn towards his stomach, and that's when he sunk in that rear naked choke that he didn't let go. Right, he was making sure.
Oh man, I felt so bad for the guy on the bottom, bro. He tapped on the floor. He tapped on Hoist. He tapped on on the ref. He whatever he did. But I mean, I think like I'm assuming he was squeezing hard enough. Maybe he wasn't looking. I'm sure the tap on the body sometimes you don't feel, right? So obviously it's the ref's job. You know what I'm saying? But that goes to show you too, right? The ref needs understanding of jiu-jitsu, of what's going on, because it's his response. I mean, part of it, it's his responsibility for the person on the bottom not to, you know what I'm saying, pass out or worse, right? So imagine, like, again, like those changes, you know, make I mean, those differences make I mean, the development and the evolution of that, of the referees also knowing, you know,
Yeah.
what's going on, it changed the game, you know?
Yeah, and I think it was also like it wasn't just I mean, definitely the referee should have known or recognized when the match actually was over, when the guy tapped, right? He tapped like aggressively on the floor. But I think Hoist kind of held it there a little longer because I think in one of in the documentary he said that Bordeaux actually bit him, right? I think he bit him on the ear or something like that. Do you
Mm.
remember
Oh
that?
yeah.
Yeah. I think
Mhm.
when they were standing, he actually bit him in the ear, and when he went to the ground, he was like, "I'm just not gonna let this show go just to like give him a little bit more of extra sauce," and that's what he kept it there. And then finally, the referee, went to go pull him off, and even in the pulling him off, you see nowadays, guys, the referees diving in there and knocking the dude over and making sure that thing gets separated. The referee was kind of like, "Hey, Hoist, let's sit in the corner, you know." But
No, for
yeah,
yeah.
he held it there on purpose. He had it there.
Yeah, yeah, you can tell. You can tell. And I mean,
I'm
again, man, you have so much adrenaline going on. Like, you know, go ahead,
Yeah.
friend. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm looking at the fight stats right now. Like total strikes for Gerard Bordeaux, 0. Significant strikes, well, 0. That everything like it's like a flawless victory basically because like his fight stats is like 0%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. I mean, and again, man, just again, we're yes, we're biased on jujitsu. You know, we love jujitsu. We appreciate it. You know, I truly like, again, the kids and the guys here. Like, you know, we tell them, like, you know, striking is important. Like, you have to know. You have to know how to use basic hand movement and legs, right? You know, it's a must. You know, if you're looking at it from a self-defense perspective, right? If you don't care about self-defense and you don't care about fighting or whatever, then whatever. But at the end of the day, like, jiu-jitsu does include, you know, because people come in and they're like, oh, you know, but do you do any striking? And technically we do. We understand it. We know how to use it. We know how to manage it. And you know, it's definitely imagine, man, not being able to throw a punch or land a punch, and that's all you have. Like, yo, that's demoralizing, man. Like, you know,
Absolutely.
you're going in there, again, a boxer, you're going in there and you can't land a punch, or you don't get to throw or to use what you have. Like, imagine taking out all the tools in your toolbox and none of them working. That's it. Like, little by little, it's no longer a fight for you. It's like, man, I need to get out of this cage, and like, I wasn't expecting this.
Right. And,
You
and
know.
then
We
if you
saw
think
that
about it,
recently with go ahead, Hernan. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. You saw the recent what?
No, and I was gonna say we saw that recently with Marvin Vettori versus Israel Adesanya. He
Mm-hmm.
going into the fight think that I'm gonna just take down Izzy and just gonna control him, and then you can see like as the fight progressed, as Izzy was able to get to get out of like different grappling positions, you know, like and stand back up, get the fight back to the feet. You can see like how demoralizing it was for Marvin Vettori, you know. So
Right.
I just want to
It's
bring
true.
that up.
And at the same time, Izzy's training a little bit more jiu-jitsu too, right? He got his
Yeah,
purple belt not too
purple
long ago
belt from
from Andre
Andre
Galvao.
Galvao. Yep.
Yeah, and I think there were some videos that were released after the fight showing him training with Andre on the wall, defending. But Izzy, yeah, once he got on his back, he didn't take as much damage as the previous fight. And obviously the previous fight was a heavier weight class, but he was able to get back up and stuff like that. But yeah, the game's changed, right? And it's funny because the first fight when we were talking about it with Gerard Bordeaux he was the one that kicked the dude in the face and knocked out his tooth, right? So
Yeah.
now everybody that night, everybody was like, "Oh man, this guy's dangerous. This guy's dangerous." Now he makes it all the way to the finals. Horace Gracie makes it to the finals. Horace never even got punched once in the whole thing, and now you're thinking he's going against this. Horace Gracie is going against this striker who's longer, who obviously is dangerous. What do you do? Like, and he answered that question effectively with, jujitsu, right, with self-defense, and it was graceful, man, to be able to see that. And after that, you're like, wow, and that was the whole point, right, to prove to the world that Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is the dominant form of self-defense, is the dominant martial art, and they did that effectively for the first several UFCs, right? I think he won 3 out of the 4, and the only reason why he didn't win number 3 was because he was tired, right? And he had to back out. with that chemo fight. And we'll talk hopefully about 2, 3, and 4, in the future. But I mean, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu basically ruled for the first few years, and nowadays, if you see any MMA fighter will straight up tell you that one, if it wasn't for Royce Gracie, if it wasn't for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA wouldn't be where it is right now, right? The MMA wouldn't be on the scene. MMA wouldn't be as popular. People wouldn't know, people would still be going to, taekwondo schools and karate schools and living in their own little bubble. But now everybody's cross-pollinating, right? Everybody's training everything. If you really want to be an efficient and effective martial artist, you got to learn everything.
I mean, you look at these fighters now, like it's dangerous, right? You have great striking, like someone who's coming in, like Israel, who's coming in, has great striking,
Yep.
and now is adding jujitsu. Muay Thai is legit, right? And if you're effectively doing that, like I wouldn't want to go up against a Muay Thai fighter. I see somebody coming in and standing lay down and be like, yeah, for real, right? If you know how to use those 8 limbs, right? The 8 points, right? But at the end of the day, now you're adding jujitsu. Man, it's a recipe for disaster,
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at it, like the game has changed so much that the master in jiu-jitsu has a really hard time to try against wrestlers and against strikers. I mean, Damian Maia is a great example. The dude is a beast on the floor, right? He is. I would say many would can say the greatest, jiu-jitsu fighter in MMA, now, right? Obviously, Charles Oliveira is legit too, right? He's a 3rd-degree black belt as well. But I think that when you think about who's the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighter in MMA, everybody puts their finger at Damian for what he's done, right? When you see him when he goes against a striker or when he goes against a wrestler, he has a super hard time to get them down to the ground, right? And it wasn't like that back in the UFC, in UFC 1 days, right? Where it was just one versus the other. Now, like we said, that evolution of mixed martial artists, it really has taken things to another level. So people like Damian Maia, who relied a lot on his jiu-jitsu in his earlier days, has to now add more elements, and I don't think he's done that, right? He hasn't really added, that slick striking. Obviously, he's older. He's an older guy too. He's like 43 or so.
43, yeah.
43. And his wrestling is very basic. You try to just close the distance, go for that single, dump him, right? And when have you seen him do anything else, right? When have you seen him shoot for a double or anything like that? At worst case, when he feels like he's threatened, he sits on his back, pulls guard, and is like, "Yo, come in." And nobody's gonna do that. Nobody's gonna be like, "Let me jump in there and see what's going on," right?
So
I feel like he's the last of the specialists in the UFC.
Oh, you got Charles Oliveira, man. That dude's a beast, man. He's.
Oh no, I meant like just like that one single.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. Absolutely.
I mean, so in I guess because we're talking about jiu-jitsu, and I don't want people to think that before jiu-jitsu was all jiu-jitsu, right? And it was all jiu-jitsu, and I think that was the most efficient way of defending. Now obviously everybody is evolving, even nowadays outside and like street fights and all that stuff. People are changing and evolving and all that. I still feel jiu-jitsu is the most efficient, but I think it's mainly because of how we train jiu-jitsu, because we're able to appreciate a real life situation, because of how we fight and because of how we spar, how we train in general, right? If you come in for a class and you're learning, you're sparring, you're simulating a real life situation pretty much every class, right? So at the end of the day, I think it's and what we talked about earlier, I think jiu-jitsu is the most efficient because of the practice and because of the control it gives you, right? It may not necessarily be the and this is because of what I've seen and what I've from experience of before Kung Fu and all that, because all those arts I feel like we appreciate, but I think it's just the efficiency of what we do, right? How we train. We've gotten choked out probably 100 times, right? So now is it that we're gonna be can we get choked out in the street? Absolutely, but we're gonna be more what is it? We're gonna be more like a little bit more versed,
cognizant. Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, yeah.
In that situation, right? We're gonna be, from someone getting mounted. If Hoyes Gracie mounts us right now, we're not going to tap from pressure. Well, hopefully not, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe, maybe we will, but right. But at the end of the day, we may have a few more seconds to, and that's the most important thing, right? We tell people like it's the first few seconds of a self-defense situation that like even when adults get attacked, maybe females who God forbid get attacked, like or even adults in general, like it's the first few is your reaction, right? Because if we see the movie, somebody gets choked and they're just like slapping the hands, is the staying calm in that moment, right? Because that's the moment that's all you have, right? If you try to if you use your time to react like slapping and trying to do something ineffective, you're wasting valuable time.
Right.
So I think jujitsu in itself, because of the efficiency and because how we practice, it's gonna be the best option in general,
Yeah. Absolutely. I think if your goal is to be a martial artist and you want to know a little bit about everything, obviously you have to mix it up, do mixed martial arts. But I think for the common person who is not going to want to train everything, we don't got enough hours in the day to put in time for strength and conditioning and wrestling and then boxing, kickboxing or whatever, Muay Thai and then jiu-jitsu. You don't have that, right? I think for the most logical martial art that you should train, anybody should train, is jiu-jitsu, because one, the most important thing is you're going to pick up the self-defense, right? Now, if you think about a scenario in the street, most times if you yourself are going to get into an altercation, it's usually a big dude versus a small dude, or a woman versus a man who trying basically be intimidating. So that situation is UFC number one: the small guy versus the big guy, the weak guy versus the strong guy, and jiu-jitsu is the answer for that, right? At the same time, like Diego said, there's no other martial art where you go 100% all the time, right? All the time, and it's safer. It's you're more effective, even for kids. Like, could you imagine a kid you're teaching him Muay Thai? How likely is he going to land that perfect strike to knock out an adult? Even if he does, he probably don't have the power behind it to do it, right? With jiu-jitsu, he could, I'm sure all of us have gone against a young dude, either 10 to 15 years old, who has some basic jiu-jitsu knowledge. He can hold you off. He can defend. He can use his legs. He can push away. He has skills that can benefit him throughout all his life simply through jiu-jitsu. And again, we're advocating for jiu-jitsu. We're advocates for jiu-jitsu. We're biased, right? But in reality, there is nothing compared to it. And I haven't seen anything like it. You could argue otherwise. People could argue otherwise. And, but at the end of the day, I believe.
Yo, look at these young guys. Look at these young guys who are fighting now, bro. The kid Galvao, Albate, even the kid Cole. Man, bro, 16, 17 years old. Tackett, right? Tackett is another 17-year-old. Like, bro, you see these kids, and they again, even if you take a junior black belt, a black belt in another art, whatever the case may be, it's a different game, man. You see Galvao's fights, like the kid, bro. He's a monster, man.
On Friday against
man, it's legit stuff, bro. It's legit stuff, man. And and again, yes, we advocate for jiu-jitsu, but again, just going back to that UFC one fight and seeing that the efficiency, should make one think like, man, this is it,
Absolutely.
I also want to mention to the Rotolo brothers. Remember Ty versus Craig Jones on Friday? I mean, he more than held his own against Craig Jones, and even was threatening submissions.
15. And I think the previous fight, he went against Luis Panza, tapped him out like that. And Luis Panza, world champion. He tapped him out with a heel hook like that.
These
and
kids,
you got this
man.
kid who's like 16, 17 years old, maybe 18 years old now, who was able to hold off, an ADCC medalist. And obviously, Ty, he's a medalist too. He got, I think, who came in fourth, right?
And also had a 20+ pound weight advantage on him as well.
And he was able to hang with him for 15 minutes, right? Obviously he didn't come out on top, but mean, he's a beast, right? This guy's
Yeah, I thought it's funny because like even in that loss, I felt like he won. Like like the respect and stuff like that. Like the fact that he was able to hold.
and
But
it's kind of like that Helio Gracie mindset, right? Like Helio didn't win the fight physically, but he was able to hang in there for 3+ hours against a younger dude, and they gave him his props. Like, yo, yeah, you won. For him was like, if it's a draw, I won, right? It's kind of like the same mindset. If you take it like that, you got a young kid, and obviously he's been training for forever. But the same, Craig is an amazing jiu-jitsu practitioner, and you would think the weight difference and the skills, but he holds on for 15 minutes.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, these kids are developing, a lot different these days, man.
Absolutely, and it goes to tell you how beneficial it is for children to start early, to really start early, even if they don't really get into it. There was one fight on there, Aaron Hart. I don't know if you guys saw that fight.
Yes, versus Rafael Gades.
Yeah, yes. So it's funny because I've met. So Aaron Hart's father. He's a black belt on The Voice, and I met him. When I was a white belt, I think. He came to Tacoma Park one time. He was a brown belt at the time, and I think she came, or we met her before. She was a kid, man. She was like 10 years ago. She was probably like 15. I think she's like 25 or 27 now, but she was 15 she was really young. But you see how skilled she was in being able to defend and stuff like that, and how good she was, because she started young, man. And she said it in the interview. She's like, I really didn't get into it until much later. I didn't appreciate it until much later. But so that for me, it's like, if you get your kids into it and let them just be on the mats, right, and let them do what they have to do, and even if they don't really fall in love with it, eventually they'll really cling on to it. Another good example is Sinistro, Francisco, right? I remember when he came to the gym, he came to Roll Star. He said he used to follow his brothers train jiu-jitsu, but he didn't really get into it 100% and devote his life to it. So he was like 16 or so when he was a little older. So yeah, it goes to show you that even if you train and it's not like 100%, you're gonna still benefit something. And then when you do put it on, and like you get on it for real, leaps and bounds, man. Colabate, Mika Galvao, Andre Taki, Rotolo brothers. These guys are
Nicky Ryan too. I think he's still 19, right? Yeah, Nicky Ryan.
Yeah,
He's 19.
Yeah,
man.
It's amazing.
Again, man, different breeds, different
different time, man.
Yeah, different time. And
it's only gonna get better, right? It's only gonna get better. The knowledge content, the amount of jiu-jitsu black belts, the amount of talent that's available for people now. People are cross training now. Back in the day, it was like, oh no, your gym, you're my gym. Now people are just training with each other. It's a huge community, and it's a welcoming community. So now you got people who are training, who are starting now. Like your kid Fernando, when he becomes 16, 17 years old, he's gonna be a beast if he starts now, right? Starts early.
Yeah.
And because of the level of knowledge that's available, the collaboration within people, yeah, man, the sky's the limit for these guys, man.
Another thing too, just to touch upon that, like in other arts. And this is because I'm not sure if it's like just a common thing, or in other arts you see someone who's younger, someone who's older, and there's always that, like, I'm older and you're younger, and that's the way it goes. In jiu-jitsu, like I'm telling you, man, I look at these kids and I'm like, man, like, you can teach us something, right? We can learn from you, right? You have seminars that young kids are teaching, right? And they're teaching adults, right? So I think there's that respect in jiu-jitsu is definitely appreciated as well,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think Craig Jones too. Like he says, like, let me get these guys now before they get me later, because like he's fought Roberto Jimenez. Now the Ty Rotolo. He's like, let me get them out of the way now, because when they come up, like when it's when they're my age, forget about it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely, bro. Yeah, man.
But
So
this was a good one. I think we had a great time. We're at the hour. UFC number 1. It was a memorable moment. I mean, I know we probably didn't watch it until much later in our years, but it has such an impactful. It has an impact on all of us, and it really solidified jiu-jitsu as being the top martial art that people should really get into, especially if you're looking at it from a self-defense perspective. But man, final words, man. Diego, what you got?
No, it was an awesome episode. I was very excited for it. Getting to watch UFC one and seeing the development of jiu-jitsu, I appreciate it even more. If anybody's out there, give it a shot. And happy Father's Day to everyone, and hope you guys have a great weekend.
Fernando.
Yeah, the same. I mean, I could appreciate Diego's passion for UFC one. Like you could just it just
Yeah,
shone through
yeah.
in
I
this
was
episode. Yeah.
I was ready. Got the mic working and everything.
I see, yeah. So yeah, I just want to give a shout out to all the fathers out there, like especially Hernan and Diego, not only for your kids aspect, but for like your program, because like even though like these white belts coming under you, like you look they're like they look up to you as that father figure. I also want to give a shout out to my gym, Capital MMA. Just we got Hoist Gracie coming soon in a couple weeks. So I just want to give a quick shout out to Capital. Also, I want to also shout out Ecuador. We play tonight. Hopefully, we get a
Oh,
W.
What we win, man.
So
word. Let's
yeah,
get that
yeah.
W.
Yeah, man.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to all the fathers out there, our fathers. Happy
Oh,
Father's
absolutely.
Day.
My pops, yeah.
To your dad, to our dad. My dad right now. Our dad is in Turkey right now, and
Oh, awesome.
Paul, yeah, man, sending us pictures, making us feel jealous. But yeah, happy Father's Day to everybody, to all the fathers out there. I'm hoping you guys enjoyed the episode. We're gonna continue the conversation and take a look at UFC number 2 very, very soon. We'll be back next Sunday, and we'll let everybody know what's to come. But with that said, go train this week. Train hard, and with that, para siempre.
Para siempre.
Peace.
Luz.